Welcome to the AT Center at TCNJ. This webinar is titled AAC Evaluations in Schools, a Step-by-Step Approach, and is presented by me, Madison Bronstein. I'm an ASHA certified and New Jersey State licensed speech and language pathologist and RESNA certified assistive technology professional. Prior to my current role here at the AT Center at TCNJ, I've practiced in private and public schools, home care, and private practice, serving pediatrics ages 1 to 21. I've gained the majority of my specialized experience working in a private school for students with brain-based disorders in New York City. These webinars are made possible through our partnership with the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of Special Education. The statements issued by guest presenters do not reflect the stance of the NJDOE. Please use your professional judgment when implementing strategies and resources within your practice. Now, let's get into the webinar.
All right, so again, if you were here this morning, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're going to chat a little bit about AAC evaluations in school. So we are the AT Center at TCNJ. We provide professional development to educators, families, related service providers, etc., across the state of New Jersey. We want to help build capacity for assistive technology and best support our students who use AT. The Assistive Technology Center at TCNJ is sponsored by the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of Special Education, and is partially funded by IDEA Part B. All right, and as we said this morning, we have a commitment to accessibility. So all of our presentations follow this acronym POUR, P-O-U-R, so they're perceivable. So we have captions. All of our images featured have alt text. Everything is high contrast, so that's a dark background with light color text or a lighter background with dark color text. Operable, easy navigation with links, understandable, predictable, and consistent design of information, and available on all platforms. I will say we did have some issues with some of our links this morning. They kept breaking even though we were relinking them, but we will put those links in the chat, and we also have some of those on our Padlet, which we will link at the end. Padlet is a resource board, and you'll see at the end, it has various different areas of assistive technology, and we'll put some of our resources on there. All right, just some disclaimers. As I said in the beginning, I'm an ASHA certified and New Jersey state licensed speech and language pathologist. I am an employee of the College of New Jersey, and I receive a salary from the college. We do not have any financial relations or do not receive any compensation from any companies or softwares mentioned in this presentation. And in this presentation, we will highlight some differences between a school-based report and an insurance/Medicaid funded report, but this presentation aims to merely showcase some of the differences and does not discuss all components or intricacies of the Medicaid insurance process. For further guidance on the specific insurance Medicaid process in accordance with various funding sources, please reach out to a funding consultant in your area. And we will provide those links for you at the end to be able to put your zip code in and see who your funding consultant is depending on the company. Okay, if you weren't here this morning, a little bit about me. I did not start out as a speech and language pathologist on that career track. I received my bachelor's in graphic design and later went on to study speech pathology, and I received my master's in science from New York Medical College. I practiced in a variety of settings, including private and public schools, home care, and private practice, serving pediatrics and young adults ages 1 to 21. I gained the majority of my specialized experience working at a private school for children with brain-based disorders in New York City. And I also hold my assistive technology professional certification from RESNA. And in my free time, just a little bit about me. You can find me playing with my dog, running, reading books, or playing cozy games and traveling. And on the right-hand side here, just a picture of some travels and my dog Clyde. All right, so for this presentation, following this presentation, school-based speech and language pathologists will be able to conduct an AAC evaluation through a school-funded purchase process with guidance to best support an insurance Medicaid process if needed. Like I said, we'll go into that when we talk about the specifics of all the different parts and the roadmap. Following this presentation, IEP team members, stakeholders will demonstrate increased understanding of a collaborative team-based AAC assessment with the students' needs at the forefront of the process. So we designed this presentation to be for speech language pathologists, but we didn't close the door on other professionals coming in if they want to learn more about this process. Following this presentation, school-based speech and language pathologists will demonstrate increased confidence making evidence-based decisions during the AT consideration process of IEP development. All right. I really liked this, this research article that I found. So it says a survey of 71 SLPs in the United States revealed that 83% perceive their educational preparation to provide AAC services as fair to poor, and that they received most of their AAC training on the job or through self-study seminars. So I think that's something that's really important to point out. You know, myself received most of my AAC experience on the job. But, you know, how can we support our new clinicians, support even clinicians who are seasoned and may not be as experienced in the specific area of AAC? How can we set them up for success? Additionally, more than half of the respondents reported that they make AAC recommendations on a routine basis. However, over 60% of all respondents reported that they were not comfortable or competent with AAC systems. This is from ASHA. This quote at the top from a research article, it is a little dated. It is from 2003, but I do think it still reigns fairly true. Okay, and then from ASHA, we have the roles and responsibilities of school-based SLPs in the area of AAC. And I wanted to just highlight some points here. Point number 2, consider the student's need for AT, including AAC. And we're going to talk all about consideration. Number 3, request. So the third point down there, not numbered, they're bullet pointed. Request, coordinate, or conduct a transdisciplinary AAC evaluation within the student's natural environment, educational setting that includes both the student and their caregivers. Going off of that, provide trial periods with AAC systems and collect data. This is part of part 2 of 2. There were lots of competencies here. Goal writing, we're not going to go deep into goal writing in this specific presentation, but stay tuned for future offerings for some presentations on AAC, goal writing for AAC users. Ensure that students' needs are met by others on the evaluation and treatment team. Provide initial and ongoing training to teachers, parents, and support staff. The list goes on, but you can see those key points in regards to evaluation. And I love this term transdisciplinary. So we'll get into more of the importance of that. Okay, as I mentioned before, who conducts an AAC evaluation? AAC evaluations are conducted by licensed clinical speech language pathologists who specialize in or have specialized knowledge in the area of AAC. So, you know, maybe you're on your road to having specialized knowledge in the area of AAC. Maybe you already have specialized knowledge in the area of AAC. So this, you know, reflects what the competency we want for our AAC evaluators. Okay. So the roadmap. So this is kind of an overview of where what we're going to talk about in this presentation. So 1, we have the foundations of the evaluation. We're going to talk about consideration versus evaluation. We're going to talk about the team, feature matching. We're going to talk about funding source. Like I said, this presentation does not go into the specifics of the intricacies of writing an insurance Medicaid report. We will note some language differences in terms of the clinical writing, but definitely to contact your representative through, you know, either Tobii Dynavox, PRC, etc. All right, then we're going to talk about the comprehensive AAC assessment protocol, indirect, direct, and then we have system trials and comparison. And then we're going to talk about report writing. So we have a lot to get through here this afternoon. All right, so we're going to talk about consideration versus evaluation. So consideration determines whether or not the student would benefit from AAC. Evaluation is a formal assessment to determine which AAC system is the best fit for that student. So consideration is really important because it's mandated within IDEA. AAC falls under the term assistive technology. It's a form of assistive technology. So you're mandated to consider AAC AT for all students with disability. Okay. Consideration has a process, uses data to make informed decisions. When we provide AT devices, we also must provide services. So this is an AT myths document, which you can check out if you were in the presentation this morning. Similar format. Is this a myth or is this true? So it goes through some of those that are really helpful. Okay, I do want to highlight the New Jersey Special Education Code. Considering whether the student requires AT devices and services, the District Board of Education shall ensure that assistive technology devices or services, as defined in IDEA, are made available to a student with disability if required as part of the student's special education related services or supplementary aids and services. On a case-by-case basis, the use of school-purchased AT devices in a student's home or other settings is required if the IEP team determines that the student needs access to those devices in order to receive a free, appropriate public education. All right, how do I know if my student may benefit from an AAC device? Just some considerations. If the student is non-speaking or the use of verbal speech or communication alone does not meet their functional communication needs. The student uses verbal speech, but others may have difficult time understanding them. And there is a large gap between the student's expressive and receptive language skills, which may be evident on formal testing. This may affect their performance in the classroom as well as their social skills with peers. And I want to caveat this by saying, of course, there's a conversation around a language difference versus a language disorder. So definitely, taking that into account with the individual students that you're serving. Okay, so consideration is necessary. And we can take data during that consideration process. It can be quantitative data or qualitative data. All right, it should be noted that you don't necessarily need a formal eval to procure AAC for a student. In your consideration process, if you determine a need, you can speak with your supervisor about purchasing the necessary hardware and software. Right, that's kind of the process with a lot of our students. We don't, which may be why we're here, to learn about this eval process and see if we can make these recommendations based on all these things, the feature matching process, the interdisciplinary approach. Something else I want to mention here is called the specific language system first approach. So you may already be doing this in your district, even if you don't have a name for it. So this is introducing AAC as a tier 1 or 2 support, and then differentiating if the system does not support the student's need. So you can find more information there. I'm actually going to pull up the website. Here we go. So that link brings you to this website. And just to look at some pros and cons of that, just some pros: increased time for training and coaching, less system confusion, and an increase in modeling. Every system is not necessarily the same. Every student has the same program. Mitigate impact of transitions, and the students aren't waiting for a formal evaluation. And just some cons: again, one size does not fit all. So that's where that differentiation comes in with the need for a formal evaluation, but just something to consider and take a look at. Okay. We were talking about before, why should we evaluate? So evaluation gives you time to trial various devices and see what works and what doesn't. If the student has increased or different access needs, that's definitely a reason to evaluate. Incorporating input from other stakeholders, trialing in various environments, in-depth feature matching. And also if a parent were to request an evaluation, that would be another reason that you would evaluate. Some more things to consider: your timeline to complete an evaluation, that 60-day timeline, if that's feasible for your evaluation needs to determine the correct program for the student. Documentation in the IEP. I want to point out here that you should avoid documenting specific programs in the IEP until an evaluation is complete, until you've determined the best fit for that student. And also the SLP indirect time to draft and write that report. This presentation has a lot of information, and that process takes a lot of time and energy. And we know these SLPs with large caseloads, it might be hard to balance that. We want to take that thought process into account and maybe start a conversation with your director or your supervisor about providing that time in your schedule to be able to write this report. Okay, so following speaking with the parent or guardian, obtaining informed consent, notifying team members, and scheduling a set meeting. So I will talk about what set means in a moment. As I was saying before, a transdisciplinary approach. So we're just going to look at some team members that might potentially be on your team, and your team is specific to that student and their needs, of course. So we have OT, PT, teacher of the visually impaired, a hearing specialist, a parent, parents going to be on the team, the AAC user themselves. And these are just some of their roles on the team. It's not exclusive to what's on this slide, but just some ideas of where they might provide input to the team. And we also have the teacher, the AT specialist, if you have one in your district, the SLP, of course, directors and supervisors, and even our IT professionals, because they need to help set up that hardware and software and backup and the data protection, and their role is very essential as well. So that's a lot of people. That's a big team. So this article is interesting. I want to pull this one up. So this talks about different roles in the AAC assessment process. It talks about specifically different types of AAC specialists, but I did want to look at this figure here. I think it's a good visual of just all of the thinking about all those team members and their input funneling down into what your recommendations are at the end. All right, so if you haven't heard of the SET framework, the SET framework it's an acronym. So it stands for Student, Environment, Tasks, and Tools. And some things I want to highlight here are that the tools happen at the end. We're really focusing on considering our student, what environments they communicate in, what tasks or activities they're involved in throughout the day. And then we think about the tool. So this is, it's a good framework to help start that feature matching process. And I'm just going to pull up, this link, this first one, this one, there we go. So this is great because it guides you through this process in these different areas. And of course we have communication here. And it's asking you specific questions or giving you specific prompts to describe so that you can work as a team and complete this, and it'll help you just get a better idea of your students' specific needs. So this is initial consideration of feature matching, and it's important to have that team involved because you're supporting needs that you might need external support in identifying, such as access, sensory needs, mounting and positioning, and the team is involved throughout the process. And we're talking about feature matching now, but feature matching can happen throughout. You can revisit that at any point if you discover something that you feel you haven't addressed a need for previously. All right, so we're going to talk about the quiet indicators. So the quiet indicators, has a whole different indicators for different parts of the process. So when we talk about consideration, this is a way to kind of evaluate your process as a whole. And you can kind of do it pre and post and see where there is change. So it's on a scale of 1 to 5. Let me just see if I can bring this up. Oh, this isn't the matrix. This is not the matrix, excuse me. But we could just see some of the things here. Assistive technology devices and services are considered for all students with disabilities, regardless of type or severity of disability. IEP team members have the collective knowledge and skills needed to make informed AT decisions and seek assistance when needed. So just seeing how your process changes along the way. So I'm actually going to pull up, matrix. There we go. That's what we're talking about. So it ranks it anywhere from 1 to 5, and different team members can fill this out, and you can cross compare to look at your whole process. So that's what's really good about this. And these are available on our resource board, which we'll link at the end, like I said. Okay, talking a little bit more about feature matching. So what is feature matching? It's a systematic collaborative process of identifying an individual's unique communication needs, strengths, and skills, and mapping them out to match with specific features of AAC tools or strategies. So these including but not limited to some of the ones listed below: linguistic features, how your language is organized. If you were in the presentation this morning, we were talking all about how different programs are organized. Languages and cultural representation. Does this support a student's second language that they use? Does it support the access method that they might need to be able to use that method of AAC? The accessibility features that are built into the device. There are certain accessibility features that maybe the student already uses on other kinds of devices, or they might seem beneficial for that student. So just things to think about. Portability, that's a big one too. And looking back at that SET framework, what environments does the student communicate in? Is the student moving from this place to that place? Are they active throughout their day? So really just considering these kind of things in the feature matching process. All right, we're just going to pull out a few aspects of feature matching. So talking about our language organization, do they benefit from something that's organized categorically? Do they benefit from a motor plan based system? We were talking about how, maybe someone, not in all cases, but someone who might have some vision needs might benefit from something that has a motor plan because they have, decreased sensory perception in that one area. So just something to think about. Do they have literacy skills? Can they utilize a text-based system? Do they need symbol support? Just thinking about all these kinds of things. Okay, thinking about our symbols themselves, and we have lots of different ways that symbols can be represented. So we have real objects, photographs, line drawings, there's words. This is a great article here. I'm going to open this one up by Linda Burkhart and Gail Porter. We talked about Gail Porter earlier this morning. She created POD, the Pragmatic Organization Dynamic Display software. So essentially, this is a great read, but it talks about how there's no hierarchy in necessarily how symbols, what's best for a student necessarily. I like this quote here. The big problems occur when people rely on recognition only and do not give the children a chance to learn language and communicate for a range of purposes. So definitely check this out. But there's no single hierarchy or single representation that is best for all users. I noted on before what other cultural or language considerations are apparent for this student. Does the device support the ability to switch between two languages? Does it allow for customization of skin tone? Does it offer diverse voice options? Can it be customized to include reflections of culture or events in the student's life? Just some more sensory considerations like we were saying before. Is this a highly customizable software? If you're looking at high-tech systems, can you reduce the visual clutter? Can you add some space between buttons? So really just thinking about matching those needs to the specific student. Access methods, of course. This is a great time to involve your OT and your PT. Is direct selection the best access method for them? Do they need additional support with direct selection? Do they need key guard or a stylus to help them with their finger isolation and direct selection? And talking about mounting considerations as well. You can check out this article from Readapt, just the importance of why we want to mount a device correctly and to allow access for this user to the device. All right. Additional accessory considerations. I was talking about a stylus before. This device in the bottom right, this has a sound pod, which is really cool. So you can take this out and a communication partner can wear this around their neck and the device goes to the speaker so that communication partner can hear the AAC user in different environments. Like we talked about before, what accessibility features are built into the device that would help benefit the student? And we always want to think about our user. So here's a picture of evidence-based practice, little pyramid. So thinking about our client perspectives, what is the user, what do they like? What do they not like? Really getting the user involved there. These are some great free feature matching resources. I have some of them pulled up here. Let's see if I can. Here's one of them. So you can list your devices here and you can check off if it has this specific feature, and they have them organized in different categories here. So that's free and that's linked on our Padlet as well. Amazing Kids AAC has a great feature matching bundle. It is a paid resource though. I think it's around $50, but there's a lot of work put into that and it has like any and all apps that you can think of and all of their specific features. So definitely check that out if you're in the market to purchase a paid resource. I will also note the AAC Evaluation Genie app. So this is $12.99. It's to be used as a tool as part of the feature matching process. It guides you through these different areas, would ask you some questions, find this, find that. You can customize with different symbols, identify this, find the word go with different kinds of symbol sets. So And that's also compatible with switch scanning. All right, and we're looking at our funding sources. So we talked about how we're going to talk about school purchase devices. And it's important to highlight that, we don't have to justify the need. We don't have to justify the need for an insurance company or Medicaid to fund this device. If a student needs it, it's, under IDEA, it's a part of their IEP. So, all right, I just wanted to point out some differences here. So with our Medicaid funding process or insurance funding process, this can be a multi-month long process. There are lots of other players in this process, such as a physician. Also, our report language has to reflect what the student can't do without the. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit. But like I said, each vendor has different templates that they use with different criteria that they help you write that report based on what language they've seen work for acceptance and what hasn't worked. Okay, so a report is necessary for procurement of AT. And as we said, we can consider and say, yeah, this student needs it without the report necessarily. And we have more leeway, when writing this report, non-Medicaid insurance, that we can write in a more strength-based approach. So additionally, as we know, when the student ages out of school, that device goes back to the school. It is the school's device. And a difference here with insurance Medicaid is that is a dedicated device that belongs to the student. And I want to just highlight in the middle here, this is supposed to be sort of a Venn diagram, but I wanted to highlight the importance of basing your decision on data. So that's qualitative and quantitative data, obviously involving the family, and the importance of team collaboration as well. Those are for both of these processes. All right, so starting your process with some information gathering tools, some great pre-assessment resources here from Gail Van Tatenhove. She has a lot of great content and is a pioneer in the AAC field. If we just click this, I can check those out. I'll leave those there for you guys to reference. Anyway, teacher questionnaires, interviewing the parent, just getting some more qualitative information from the student and how they communicate best at home, observations in different environments around the school. If you have a photo video permission, asking parents for some videos of how the student is communicating at home. I think those can be really informative just to get that initial information. All right, and for our AAC users, we want to rethink traditional assessment tools. So I have here a picture of the communicative competence for AAC users, the 5 areas. Originally, there were 4. And I believe about maybe 15 years ago, they added psychosocial competence to this little reflected in this visual here. And if you click this link, you can read more about it. So these just talk about what areas the AAC user should have strengths or should have goals in. So we have our operational competence, that's operating the device, turning it on and off, charging it, any kind of technical skills required there. Of course, our linguistic competence, talking about our language goals specifically, social competence, strategic competence, so being able to use multiple modalities of communication if that AAC system has issues or is not working properly. And our psychosocial competence, our attitude toward AAC, our motivation to communicate, resilience to overcome communication breakdowns. Okay, so I want to talk about some assessment tools that might be more fitting for your AAC users. And you might already have these in your school, whether you have used them or not. So the functional communication profile, it has a lot of major areas of communication and language. It also has these areas for our phase 1 targets, such as teacher and caregiver reports, so really integrating that. And there's an early version for our younger learners as well.
Madison, there were a couple of questions that I wanted to highlight just as we're kind of going through the assessments. One person put in the Q&A, they said, what's your recommendation for assessment if there's no OTs or PTs on your team?
Mike, I kind of have a question in response to your question. Do you feel as though the student benefits from those services do they receive outside OT, PT services? Kind of just more questions going off of that. Like I said, our list of people who might be on the team is just a list of people who might be on the team. It's not necessarily, every team is going to look a little bit different. Some people might not have teachers of the visually impaired, and the student might not need that area of support. So I think it really depends on your student. And yeah, that's my answer. Any other questions?
Yeah, there was one more from Dina. She was saying, with the funding cuts to schools over the past years, should we always request coverage first from insurance? And if the coverage is denied, then the school would fund next.
I think that is definitely an issue that we have been facing. I think in regards to the funding, I think you were in our previous presentation in the morning, maybe looking into seeing if some of those free softwares could support the student, if it doesn't meet their needs. Yeah, I think the school is not required to say you have to go through insurance for the device. I think that's a consideration for these devices that have access needs, such as eye gaze devices. They're typically very expensive. So it's a conversation to have. Yeah, I think having a conversation about your options, definitely. Okay. So I want to talk about the communication matrix. So the communication matrix is a great tool. It's free for being able to kind of export those results. I think you have to pay a low cost, but there's also a parent friendly version available to download. So you're looking at these skills and you're mapping out your communicator with this visual here, and it's color coded. We have our skills they've mastered in certain areas, skills that are emerging, not used or surpassed, and it really creates this visual that's really friendly and easy to understand and comprehend. So we love low cost materials as well. Okay. The AAC profile. So again, we're calling back to Janice Light's areas of communicative competence, linguistic, operational, social, and strategic, and our additional psychosocial as well. Another great resource. And as you can see, it goes from ages 2 all the way to adult. Another free resource is the DAG. So this is the Dynamic AAC Goals, third edition. So this is made by Toby Dynavox, and again uses those areas of communicative competence, just the 4 here, and you go through this matrix and you notate which levels of cueing and what level of support is needed to complete the different prompts, and then it pulls out what percentage that individual is in each of these areas. So as you can see on the right here, in the area of linguistic, they could be emergent transitional, this much percent. They could be this much percent emergent, on and so forth. So similar to how the communication matrix maps those out with the emerging skills, this will do something similar. So I think that's great. Okay. And then the ALP for AAC, this is great for students who have alternative access needs, looks at different stages of learning and 5 areas of assessment. And just like I said, a great tool for students who have alternative access needs. And it's based on the ALP, which was, I believe, a PT assessment. Okay. Trialing devices or apps. So if you have your own therapy iPad that you use, many apps offer evaluation licenses for SLPs. So we have a link here that goes through the process of how to obtain those licenses for different apps. Some of them require you to take a few trainings. Some of them just require you to put your ASHA number in and you can get that app. If you're trialing through insurance, going through those representatives, your PRCs, your Toby Dynavoxes, most companies offer up to 4 weeks to trial a device. Some may allow for longer. And these are just some links if you want to check out for that insurance Medicaid funding process. Okay, so some considerations when collecting data during trials. We want to make some data-driven decisions. We want to trial AAC in multiple different environments. That includes different environments throughout the school day, at home, with various communication partners. It shouldn't just be with the SLP, with the parent, with the teacher, with peers even. Really differentiating that data is, not only, even if you're not justifying anything to insurance, if you're writing this school-based report, it's helping to generalize those skills even in those early trial stages. Ensure data is specific, your level of support that you're providing and type of support, and provide examples. Talk about maybe what activity you were doing with the student or what they were doing in that certain part of their day. So data is important in both kinds of evaluations, but especially important when justifying medical necessity to insurance or Medicaid. We want to show the least amount of prompting, the least amount of support for the individual possible in terms of insurance, Medicaid. Okay, here's an example. This is a data sheet from AbleNet. So AbleNet is another vendor. They have the Quick Talker Freestyle, which is an iPad with communication apps. So this is an example of their example data sheet that they have on their website. And here's a link to it if it's difficult to see, because I know the text is small. So as you can see here with the level of support, we're really illustrating what is going on here to illustrate the level of support with the data, the message being conveyed, the communication partner, the location, how many pages were navigated through, and what kind of communication functions they need. Here's another data sheet. This one is from PRC. As you can see, they each look slightly different, but we have our communication functions, our message. This is an interesting one, familiar and unfamiliar communication partners. And we also have over here some other skills, like attended to the display, motivated to use the device, recognized device can communicate wants and needs, calling back to those competencies for AAC. Okay, does anyone have any questions? I do see someone
that's
raise their
perfect.
hand.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we have Michael who had raised his hand. So Michael, if you would like to, come off mute, share something, if you want to put it in the chat, but I wanted to acknowledge your hand raised. And then of course, if there were any other questions, to put them in the chat or the QA. Sorry, didn't mean to raise the hand. That's fine. That is
no worries.
all good. Like I said, just wanted to make sure we weren't talking over you. Excellent. Thank you.
No worries. Okay. All right. So we're going to get into the report and we're going to talk about the trials in the reports. Okay. And we're going to talk about the report language. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the language you use if you're writing an insurance Medicaid process versus you don't need to, appeal to get a device from insurance Medicaid. With a school-based purchase, you have more flexibility to write with more strengths-based language. So that's just something to note. With the insurance Medicaid report, you're trying to write out what the student is unable to do without a speech generating device. Okay, so this is just an example that I took from some reports that I've written. For this student, without the use of a high technology SGD, X cannot communicate medical and daily care needs, make comments, share information, or engage in meaningful conversation with peers and adults. Due to increased muscle tone in his upper extremities, he is unable to use sign language as a means to effectively communicate, kind of ruling out all those other means of communication to justify that need for the SGD. Okay, and this is just an example of how you could write that same thing with a more strengths-based approach. X benefits from a high technology speech generating device as a component of his communication system. This device empowers X to independently advocate for daily wants and needs during the academic curriculum, share personal insights, and build meaningful relationships with both peers and adults. To ensure the most reliable and efficient communication, X requires an SGD which bypasses fine motor challenges associated with increased muscle tone for use of sign language, providing a clear and consistent pathway for his voice to be heard. So, all right. So these are the components of the report. So we're going to go through each of them. Some of them we're going to parse out. Here's what you would say for an insurance Medicaid report. Here is maybe what you would say for a school-based report if you're not trying to, justify that medical need there. All right, and I think it's especially pertinent in terms of background information. So in terms of insurance and Medicaid, you want to talk a lot about their medical history, their communication history, notating if they use verbal speech, notate level of reduced intelligibility, paint a picture of their limitations, essentially, using their current communication method or without an SGD. And then you want to notate that their course of impairment is not expected to improve, based on the current supports. And different vendors will give you different templates that has different language. So, that's why I caveated that in the beginning, saying, I'm not necessarily going to tell you how to write one way. It really differs depending on your funding source and your vendor in terms of insurance Medicaid. But as you can see, they end a lot of these paragraphs with, given the severity of the communication impairment, X's speech does not meet his daily communication needs. In terms of school-based funded, you could talk about relevant educational information such as classroom and teacher, family, their disability classification, their speech and language therapy mandate, summarize how they currently communicate and what supports they benefit from. You can also discuss the limitations of their current communication. And I also put in here, you can base this off of your PLAF. So there's a lot of good information that can come from that as well. Okay. So in terms of formal or dynamic assessment tools, we talked about some previously. Our criterion referenced tools that we discussed. You can discuss results here in our speech and language section if applicable. You don't need to have a formalized assessment in here or a criterion reference tool, but it does help to paint a picture of the student's current language communication skills in addition to your clinical findings. So I think it is important to include as well if it's applicable for that student. And I have here from ASHA, standardized tests should be culturally and linguistically appropriate, and standard scores should not be determined if the norming sample is not representative of the individual assessed. So, that's why we were choosing some of those lists or those criterion referenced assessments. But if the student does fit within the standardized testing population, you can use those or report your scores informally. All right. And we're going to have a receptive language section. As SLPs, you know what to write here. It's how you would, write about a student in your triennial assessment. Same with expressive language. And then in terms of pragmatic language, not every report requires you to notate pragmatic language. Some do, so it really depends on the vendor template guidance in terms of insurance Medicaid. I think it's essential to really paint that whole picture of the student. So again, similar to expressive and receptive, based on your progress towards IEP goals, clinical findings, observations, and therapy, describing those pragmatic language abilities. Okay. Similar to what we just said in terms of cognitive abilities. So with any of these sections, you really want to focus on how it's relevant to the student's use of a speech generating device. So thinking about those competencies, ability to learn new tasks, device operation, attention to the display, attention to task, memory of location symbols. And this is, really shows how that quantitative data is really important, but so is the qualitative data, what you're observing the student, how they're interacting with the device itself. If they're attending to the display and they're watching you model and they're memorizing where those things are according to a motor plan. Recognizing that the device can be used to communicate wants and needs also. So this is just an example here of a report that I wrote in terms of insurance Medicaid. So you can see how it carries over that final statement, justifying that the client possesses the cognitive skills to be able to operate a speech generating device and achieve functional communication goals. All right, and this is where you loop in your OT and PT, definitely, in terms of talking about physical abilities and mobility status. So you could talk about gross and fine motor abilities as like subsections of physical. And we really want to be thinking about how does this apply to use of an AAC device. So thinking about if the student requires a key guard for direct selection with finger isolation, or alternative access methods as well. And that's a whole other conversation, of course. All right, talking about hearing status. So, you can reference your hearing screening that was done with your school nurse. I have an example here. If the student has any kind of outside providers, obviously providing prior written formal consent to collaborate with those outside providers. So based on the results of X's most recent hearing screening, her hearing abilities are within functional limits. Throughout the evaluation, she attended to and discriminated between natural and synthesized speech at conversational loudness levels. She possesses the hearing abilities to effectively use a SGD to communicate functionally. And the length of these these sections really depends on your student and their needs in different areas. Some may be shorter, some may be longer, depending on if there's more or less information to share. All right, similarly with vision, I have an example here. And I did notate in this example some features on the device that would benefit or some of their specific needs and in regards to AAC. Okay. And as we said, I don't have any goals here because, stay tuned for a presentation more about generating goals for AAC users, but thinking back to those 5 competencies. And we want to generate short-term goals and long-term goals. And it seems kind of strange that I put them here within the report. It differs depending on, in terms of that insurance Medicaid process, if it makes more sense to have them at the end. I like to have short-term goals as like trial goals and long-term goals as continuing after the evaluation. So that's why maybe it was located here, but it depends on what makes sense to you. Okay, daily communication needs. So talking about what environments does this student require communication in, with who, what communication functions does the student use daily? And this is a great opportunity to reference our findings from our SET framework that talks about the student, the environment, the tasks, and obviously the tools at the end. So here's an example. X needs to communicate in the following environments: school, home, community. He will need to communicate with school staff, immediate family, extended family, friends, and medical caregivers. Daily communication activities include expressing wants and needs, expressing feelings and frustrations, asking questions, telling stories, participating in conversations, and being part of interactions with other children. So just an example there. And within this daily communication needs section, you could also have ability to meet communication needs with non-SGD treatment approaches, talking about even with robust speech sound therapy, this individual's natural speech is not expected to improve to meet their functional communication needs, if that is applicable for your specific students. Notating limitations of other methods of AAC, such as light or low tech, if that's applicable, or mid-tech systems, and why that's not sufficient for your particular student. Okay. Then we want to notate some features that are beneficial for that student, and note which access method has been determined to be ideal for the student. So this is under rationale for device selection, input features selection technique. And then we want to talk about the language characteristics. So we're really painting this picture, starting to paint this picture of, we have the picture of the student, we're starting to paint this picture of, these are the things within, that feature matching process that we determined would be best for that student. How is the vocabulary organized on the device? What salient features of the program or device are fitting for the student's needs? Okay, and then we're going to reflect our trials. So throughout this whole process, you're doing these trials with the student, and we want to trial 3 programs just to be able to have that data to say, this one worked better and here are the reasons why. So this is kind of just a little template, notating your trial, device name with AAC program and page set. So your device name is the hardware. So the iPad with Proloquo, that one is the page set as well. So you want to talk about your access method here. And this is just a list. It's not a, discussion paragraph. And then you want to talk about your implications of your trial. X had the opportunity to try AAC program page set. X was present and actively participated in the assessment process, as demonstrated by X. Throughout the trial period, describe the process, justify why this was not a good fit for the student. You want to do that for the first 2. And then the third one is where you talk about the features of the chosen program and why that's going to be the best fit. So I am going to share just this portion of this report that I have. So this is a student that I trialed a few programs, and we ended on TD Snap with Core First. And here I discuss the different features and why they're fitting for that student. This program is highly customizable and features a robust vocabulary consisting of single, fringe, and core vocabulary, as well as the Quick Fires page, which has a lot of social language. I talked about how he has specific interests in using PageSet Central, which is their online community of page sets that people upload, might be good for him, will be the best fit for him to be able to support his interests. And this student, we had to kind of extend this process because of some absences, not being able to get enough data to really say, this is definitely the one. So we did notate that there. Let me go back to so this is going to lead you into your final summary. So here you're making a recommendation, summarizing the success of the trial with the program and features you discussed in the previous chosen paragraph. If other accessories are needed, this is where you justify the need. For example, a key guard or a wheelchair mount, you would put the specs in there, even if you've already mentioned it in another section. All right, and then at the end, we have a treatment plan and signature. So as I said before, there are a few more elements to an insurance Medicaid process, your physician involvement statement. There's also a disclosure when you're going through these vendors that the SLP performing the evaluation is not an employee of and does not have a financial relationship with the supplier of any SGD. And in terms of school-based, you can echo their current speech and language mandate, talk about the importance of team and parent training to support communication facilitation and usage going forward, stating that continued communication facilitation will prevent device abandonment over time. We really want to drive that home. We don't want to have the device be abandoned because of lack of support. Okay. Just thinking about some next steps, documentation, the IEP, any modifications to the mandate with the necessary processes, informing your IEP team throughout the process, implementation and carryover. So, when you get the program that you decide on, really customizing that for the student, personalizing it for them, integration into the classroom throughout the school day, etc. We want to train our communication partners to help facilitate this language across the school day. And I just added here also to be patient. The student and their team are learning, and so are you. And then I have a funny little GIF here. Hopefully you feel like maybe you have some tools that you can use moving through this process to be able to write and go through an evaluation process for your student. All right, I know that was a lot of information, and it was a little wordier and I don't want to say less fun, but I feel like this morning's presentation was a little more interactive. But if anyone has any questions, definitely let me know in the chat. And while we are fielding questions, I'm going to put our Padlet up here so we can, let me link that as well. This is our Padlet. I just wanted to share it with you guys. So we have all kinds of different columns for resources here that you can check out. We have the resources from today's presentation in this AAC Evaluations Resources tab here. We also have some about digital accessibility as well, just in regular AAC Resources tab. And yeah, okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, you know what? Actually, I just want to share our evaluation for you guys. And I do see some questions. Someone said, Janine said, sorry, I think this question goes more towards the first presentation, but what happens when you have a high school student and there is nothing, sorry, it keeps jumping. There's nothing that motivates them other than sitting on the computer and watching the same 5 seconds of a specific video. So I'm assuming this is a high school student who uses AAC. That's a tough question. I would definitely have a conversation with the team and the family, seeing if there are any intrinsic motivators at home, getting that information and trying to paint a better picture of the student's interests. Lisa said, do you recommend adding an assistive tech time into the IEPs for the student? I seem to struggle with time to program update and help train the team to familiarize myself. I feel like the student's entire speech session becomes me doing these things. Yes, if your schedule allows, that would be awesome to allow for that program time and program that into the student specific IEP.
And Madison, may I just add one other thing to that point? And we talk about this a lot, and obviously we mentioned at the start that this is about building capacity. Sometimes there isn't another person, but we want you to be thinking about too, who else might help in that way? What other person on the team can assist in terms of updating things, programming things, again, to where is appropriate? Because we know that a lot of people are a one person kind of team, if you will, but we really want schools, Madison mentioned this, of course, way at the top and talking about evals in terms of a transdisciplinary team, but we really want to think about, because what if, again, you're sick that day, or, there's got to be some other kinds of backups and processes. So maybe that's a conversation with the team to say, this is where I find, in terms of the time, definitely mapping out that time, but also who else could be of some benefit there as well.
Yes, I'm going to share. Someone asked for the Padlet again, so I'm just going to share. There's the link to the Padlet, and I think Vanessa put the evaluation there. Okay, I went through AbleNet to secure a device for one student. Please tell me other ways to secure insurance funding to get a device for a student. So we also have some other vendors, PRC Saltillo, we have Tobii Dynavox, New Motion Speech Solutions, kind of contracts, is like a party that's associated with Forbes and Talk to Me Technologies. It's kind of a complicated thing to explain, but they are another vendor. So I'm linking in the chat. You can find your local consultant. So depending on what part of New Jersey you're located in, you'll have a different funding consultant. So if you're interested in this process, our Central Jersey funding consultants for Tobii Dynavox, Tara, and for PRC is Sarah, Tara and Sarah. So, but if you're in a different part of New Jersey, you might have a different funding consultant. So I would definitely check those out. If you want any more vendors, I can link that to you. And let me just make sure I'm getting all these questions. How do you determine how many options are offered on the device? For example, do you use 40 spots or 60 spots? What would lead you to use different amounts? So we were talking about before how you want to allow the student to have the most robust vocabulary as possible. That if you have any additional concerns, such as maybe if the student is able to discriminate between icons with a big grid size, that it's not necessarily an evidence-based tool, but that AAC Evaluation Genie, you could kind of take some qualitative assessment of that. It'll put stuff in a larger and larger grid size, and it'll say, find this, find that, find this. But more so than even that, I would just suggest trying with different grid sizes and seeing how the student does. So I would suggest the 60 and see how the student does with the 60 if you're between the two. Padlet. Also share the evaluation from this morning. I lost it in the chat. Yes, we have the evaluation. Anyway, email the slides. Yes, we will do that. And Vanessa is on that. QR code for the Padlet. I'm going to put that again in here. I have the link, but once you get the slides, you can take note of the QR code. It'll bring you to the same place. So does anyone else have any questions? It is saying that I need access, and I did request it, but it is still not working. Huh. Vanessa, I know that you are the owner of the Padlet. Do you have any?
Well, let me take a look at it. It is going to be part of the post-event email, so you're going to get that as well.
Oh, I do see another question that came in the Q&A. How many programs do you recommend trialing during an evaluation? So I would say at least 3. So that gives you, that's what, a lot of, to kind of cover the base of like if you're going through an insurance Medicaid process or just doing kind of a school evaluation, it both is like a minimum for that process, as well as really just gives you that data to be able to say, hey, this one has this feature or these features that my student needs, as opposed to, this one does not meet the needs based on the features specifically. Anyone else have any questions? And if you didn't get the evaluation, it is in the chat and it will be in the post-event email as well. And someone just asked, can we get ASHA CUs for this course? You can get PDHs, so those you have to track yourself. The same with the presentation this morning. So you can read more about it. I don't know if Vanessa, did you link that in your?
Yeah, earlier, and then I just recopied it because I know there's a lot in the chat. So if it gets a little lost, and it's going to be in the emails as well at the at the end.
And I just want to reiterate that we as the AT Center we provide education and training to school districts, and if you're going through this process, whether it's insurance Medicaid or just a school report and you need a sounding board or you want some guidance, like we're here to do that. We don't do evaluations in this role, but we definitely can provide you with some guidance. Ooh, will you come and train the SLPs in our district? Sure, just reach out to us via our email or our contact us form. I'll just put the email in the that's our email. And this is mine. I'm going to write mine in the chat as well. That's me. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And, you know, happy to take this conversation further if anyone has any more questions or wants to reach out via email. But I hope you have a great rest of your Friday and have a great weekend, and hope you learned something new.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Are you a New Jersey educator looking for support or professional development tailored to your district's AT needs? We offer free, customized training and coaching for NJ teachers, paraprofessionals, and families. From hands-on workshops to individual classroom support and small group facilitation, we're here to help. Visit us at atcenter.tcnj.edu to learn more. Have a question? Contact us at atcenter@tcnj.edu. Please like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more content on all things assistive technology.